entrepreneurs they just hate. And I'm actually learning to really love sales. You know why? Because most people hate sales. I used to really hate sales. I'm starting to see that sales is actually this adventure where you get to learn more about other people, you get to share, you get to serve, you get to teach, you get to educate. I am really beginning, and I say beginning because I still have my own stuff with sales. I am really beginning to see that sales gives life. It gives life to you. It gives life to the people that you're selling to. So there is a lot about sales where in order for us to really tap into the power of selling, you've got to have your inner badass intact and you've got to fire your inner critic. And your inner critic is oftentimes going to tell you that salespeople are crooks. People who sell, they steal money from people. How do you know that somebody can afford your services? Why are you going to sell something so expensive to somebody who can barely afford to eat? I mean, the list could go on and on. However, in today's training, we're going to talk about how do you deal with the objection and the rejection. First step to dealing with objections and rejection in sales is dealing with your inner critic. In other words, you gotta shut down those voices that tell you that selling is bad, that salespeople are crooks. Now, there are some crooks who sell. There are lots of crooks who sell. The Bernie Madoff thing, you've been to a used car sales lot and somebody tries to convince you that you want to spend way too much money for a vehicle, and you turn around and look at their blue book value and you realize, yeah, that person was trying to sell me a raw deal. There are good and bad people in the world. What are you going to say? All people are bad? You're not going to do that. So you're going to come across people who are manipulating through sales, and you're going to come across people who are transforming through sales. And your goal as an entrepreneur, or even as an aspiring entrepreneur who's one of your biggest fear factors is you don't like to sell, or you don't know how to sell, or you don't want to sell. One of the most important things you've got to do is shut down anything that your inner critic is telling you about selling in general, because everybody sells. Everybody. People who date online sell with their profile, your match profile, your eHarmony questionnaire profile. That is selling. We all sell. So at the end of the day, if we all sell and sales happens all over the place, why would you not sell in your own business and experience the level of transformation and help other people experience the level of transformation that you offer? Sell. But first, we got to get rid of the inner critic and how the inner critic is speaking to us about sales. So when you begin to think about selling in your business, whether it's a business you have or a business that you plan on having or you're thinking about creating, you first have to deal with whatever beliefs the inner critic is telling you about sales. People are salesy, they manipulate, they bug, they're annoyances. Salespeople never stop, they won't leave you alone, they wear you down. I mean, we have all of these negative connotations about people who sell. Now, how do you deal with the inner critic who's doing this? Well, think about a time when somebody sold you something amazing. When somebody sold you something that literally changed the game for how you looked or how you felt or what you did next in life. How grateful are you for that person who sold you something? How grateful do you feel? How much did that person convincing you that you were worthy of whatever it is you bought? How much did that person change the game for you? A lot. And you have the power to do that for other people through your business. So we have to have that little get it together talk with our inner critic and dismiss all of those limiting beliefs about sales first to deal with objections and rejection in selling. But then once you actually start to do the act of selling, what do you do about the objections? What do you do about the rejection? Rejection is hard for most people. I don't know anybody who says, I just love to be told no 50,000 times a day, or I love to pick up the phone and call somebody and just have them tell me, no, not right now. I'm not interested. No, not really. Nobody on the planet loves rejection. And yet when you start to sell, you're going to experience rejection. It's going to happen. Now, let's talk about objection and then we'll talk about rejection. So in objection in sales, and I learned this through someone else, Suzanne Evans. Suzanne Evans said that there are three main objections in selling, and they don't differ from person to person. The three main objections that people use when you are selling to them is time, money, or their spouse or partner. So when somebody is going to turn down your offer for transformation, they're either going to tell you that they don't have enough time, they don't have the money, or their husband or wife said no, or I have to ask them. So once you know that all objections to selling, to what you're selling, lives in those three categories: time, money, and spouse. In advance, you could start to come up with how are you going to deal with those objections? What is going to be your response? A lot of people, especially the people who have negative beliefs about selling, will say, well, listen, once somebody tells me that they can't afford the services that I offer, well, I'm not going to offer them the services anymore because they can't afford it. So money is the objection. Here's the thing. People find the money for the things they want. Talk to the people who are broke, who go to Starbucks every single day and spend $10 on 2 lattes 7 days a week. They are finding $14 a day, which boils down to at least 7 times 4, 28. Whew, that's a lot of money. $14 a day. That's a lot of money. They're finding at least a good $80, $90 a week to go to Starbucks and buy 2 lattes a day. You can't tell me that people are going to give you the objection of money. Hey, Shauna, you can't tell me that people are going to give you the objection of I can't afford to pay for your services or your product, and you're going to just leave it at that. Let me tell you why you're not going to leave it at money. People find the money for the things that they want. Talk to the people who can barely pay for their rent, but they get a $28,000, $35,000, $45,000 car, $55,000, or even better yet, people who live in a shack, but they wear shoes that cost $500. I'm talking one pair of shoes for $500. Money is never the issue when people say no to you. So once you know the three major objections in selling: time, money, or somebody's spouse or partner. Those are, every objection you're ever going to get is going to be down to those three. Then you prepare in advance. What is your response to those things when people give you those objections? Because here's the thing. Whatever you offer, you have to believe in it so much that you also believe that them not taking full advantage of what you offer is so detrimental that it will cost them way more things than money. It will cost them health. It will cost them life. It will cost them relationships. It will cost them time. Like, you have to be sold on what you're selling. So when you get these three objections, you can say to them, listen, money gets tight. We all have tight money, or maybe there's not enough time. But if you don't take this and transform your life, this is what your life's going to look like in 6 months, in 9 months, in 1 year. And I don't want that for you. You don't deserve that. So that's, first of all, how we deal with the objections. In selling, there's only three main objections you're ever going to see. And Suzanne Evans covered it: time, money, and another person's spouse or partner. People are either going to say, I don't have the time for what you're selling, I don't have the money for what you're selling, or I got to ask my husband or wife, period. So once you know that all objections fall in those three brackets, you need to prepare yourself for those objections before you even get somebody on the phone, so you know exactly what you're going to say to them to remind them that they're worthy of their own transformation. So that's how you deal with objections in selling. Now, rejection is a whole other thing, because like I said before, nobody likes to be rejected. I don't know anybody who says, I love to be told no 15,000 times a day. Nobody. So there are a couple things you want to get your mind right about when it comes to rejection. Number one, rejection is God's protection. When you get rejected from something good, that opens the space for something great. So you in your own mind have to put into place what rejection actually means in the grand scheme of things. Because so often we let our inner critic run the show on rejection, and then we're making rejection mean stuff like, so they said no to me, which means I'm not good enough, or they didn't call me back because there's somebody better. We can make rejection mean a ton of things that has nothing to do with anything. It's all in our head. At the end of the day, you've got to decide that any rejection you get in sales is God's protection. Period. The end. It's God's protection. And before you go selling stuff to just anybody and everybody, if you want to reduce the level of rejection you're going to get, you need to qualify before you offer. Which means so often people start a business and they say, well, I'm going to take anybody and everybody. I'm going to throw it out there and I want everybody to buy from me. Problem with that is you want your tribe, your ideal client, your ideal customer to buy from you. You do not want the customer that was not meant for you to buy from you, because they will be more of a pain in your butt than they ever will be a profit in your pocket. So you need to qualify before you offer anything to anybody. Make sure, is this who I really want to work with? Is this who I really want to spend my expertise, my time, offer my value to? Is this who I'm meant to serve? Because if it's not, whoever does the rejecting, because you might fire them as a client, or they might not go with you, they weren't meant for you and you weren't meant for them. And so often we take on clients that actually become more of a cost, more of a liability than an asset. And so if you qualify before you offer, you never have to worry about that kind of nonsense. Here's the other thing. Be very good about rejecting those who are not your ideal client, period. Sometimes we get in this mode of, let me just everybody. Whatever you bring in, and then we start lowering our prices, lowering our costs. No, you're not Walmart. We're not going to be Walmart. At the end of the day, identify, write out who is your ideal client. Where do they shop? What do they do? What do they need? Here's the most important thing about your ideal client. What keeps them up at 2 o'clock in the morning? What keeps your ideal client up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and why are you the answer to that 2 o'clock in the morning problem? And then write out in specifics who that client is. And then when you start to offer, when you start to sell, if people don't meet that client profile, guess what? You don't offer them anything. Because at the end of the day, they're either going to say no anyway, or you're going to realize later on that they were too much of a pain in the butt for you to work with for the money that they gave you anyhow. So reject those who are not your ideal client. Got to write that down first. Last piece of this. A no doesn't mean a never. And this is where the inner critic loves to play. The inner critic loves to say, well, okay, it's not coming now. So that means it's never going to come. No, a no simply means when it's your ideal client, when it's what you really want and who you're meant to serve, a no simply means not right now. You have to be persistent in selling. I think the statistic says something like it takes 13 interactions with a potential customer before they actually buy from you and become a customer. So every time you go to sell, I want you to ask yourself before you give up, did I reach out to them 13 times? Did I offer them value 13 times? Did I bridge the gap for them 13 times? Did I touch their lives 13 times? Because if you didn't do 13, there's not any such thing as giving up. 13 is the average now. It was 8 5 years ago. It's 13. So at the end of the day, you want to move people from this concept of reach to connection. And the best way to sell, and it's going to be harder on the objection and the rejection category, the best way to sell is to begin with an ask, move to an offer, and then go for dealing with objections and rejections via a phone call. I know, I'm not a fan of cold calls. I'm not a fan of sales calls. At the end of the day, the best thing you could ever do is do a free consult with somebody, spend 45 minutes giving them amazing value, and then sell them at the end. What most people do, and this is going to be my final point because I don't want this to go too long, most people spend 45 minutes on the phone and they don't do the selling at the end. They don't close the deal. Here's the thing. If you don't close the deal, you are keeping your ideal client from the transformation they deserve. Period. It's not about you. It's about them. So it's not enough to be on the phone with them. You've got to actually close the deal. You've got to actually say to them, this is what you need, and you need it right now, and here's why. And here's what's going to happen if you don't do this right now. Here's what's going to cost you in 6 months. Here's what it's going to cost your family. Here's what's going to cost your life. And not because you're trying to get them scared and afraid, but because you truly believe that what you offer in your business is so important that if they don't have it, that is exactly where they're going to be in 6 months to a year. That's exactly what they're going to be facing. You've got to believe that. And once you believe that, you will start to close and you will start to sell. But don't do this, I'm going to,